What's up, guys? Troy, ATXRC Productions here. I was going to hold off on making a video about the FPVLR antennas until later this weekend. I didn't really have a lot of test time with these yet. I just got them yesterday. Thank you, Tony. I paid for these, guys, just so you know. I did pay for these. These are actually the original mock-up ones, just so you know. I lucked out and got the original models. So there's some talk going around about people that have received them and are having questions about what range to expect. And people are wanting specific numbers. So this is where me and 3DR start to disagree on a few things. Not in any kind of way. I don't think they're trying to do anything purposely. I just don't think... I don't think they want us to be really super concerned about the Wi-Fi getting interference as far as being taken over or a wireless router in somebody's house causing it to do something it's not supposed to. That theoretically should not happen or is not possible. So I think why 3DR is continuing to tell us not to worry about Wi-Fi interference is due to people not wanting to be concerned about it basically failing because of it. That being said, Wi-Fi interference is affecting range. There's no way to go about it, about saying it's not. I personally have already known this because I've flown specifically over Wi-Fi areas and over no Wi-Fi areas, and I've gotten tremendous differences. Anybody that's seen my series knows that I've gotten 1,300 was my initial yardage or feet, meters. I'm sorry, wait. 1,300 meters was the original amount of meters that I made it on my first flight as far as trying to test the range. The second time, I got 1,600 meters. The third time, I got close to 2,000 or right around 2,030, I think. That was the most I had gotten on the first solo, and that was in a couple different areas. Now, the longest one, when I get 2,000 something, I was actually approaching a business park, and I think that's when it triggered it. So I had already kind of seen a pattern of heavy Wi-Fi as opposed to low Wi-Fi areas. Today, I went out with the FPVLR setup. I also took the stock setup. A couple of notations. These antennas are rated at like 2.1 dB is what Tony says. These are rated at 9. 9.5. I don't have the message in front of me. I'm sorry, but it's in the 9 range. So the dB is not total strength, okay? There's some videos out there that I really think everybody that bought one of these needs to go look at. Before you start talking about what you think you know, go look at a video about RF types and types of antennas and how they actually visually look, because everything's different. These are spherical helix antennas. Now, both of mine are RCHP, so right hand circular polarization. RHCP. Tony's making one RHCP and LHCP, so you can actually lower the ground floor noise. But mine are the original setup, so they still should be fine. They're the original setup where they're not perfectly aligned, or they're perfectly aligned and they're not slightly tweaked. Antennas should be technically slightly tweaked. They shouldn't be the exact same positioning, because then you'd pick up from all the exact same angles. You want to cover more spectrums by kind of tweaking them and turning them slightly opposite of each other. So, anyways, in regards to solo, because it's Wi-Fi based, because there's Wi-Fi out in the world, and people remember how much Wi-Fi is out in the world. There's WiMAX all over the place, all kinds of outdoor Wi-Fi going on. Those things are hugely boosted and could provide interference. What would this interference do? The interference would more than likely cancel out your signals, which means that basically they're stronger. That's easy to accomplish. I mean, when you start getting further and further away, you're exponentially lowering your strength or sensitivity, and you should be basically touching each other with the non-visible spectrum of whatever antenna is radiating. So when they're touching, you're in contact, you're great. When they separate, RTH. When something wedges in between them because it's stronger, because it's here next to it and it encompasses one or the other, or is closer to one than the other one loses signal and is canceled out. It's not a diversity technically setup, I don't believe. I'm not exactly sure how all this works, but bottom line is, I did a couple of test flights, and I actually contacted Tony because I too had some questions. I didn't want to just call him out and say, hey, these aren't working the way I thought they were, because I had weird results. This is what happened. I'm going to try to work this out real quick. I was in a very isolated industrial park, or not even industrial park. There's one industrial company. And then on the other side of that, there's about a 4 by 2 mile rectangular plot of undeveloped land. There's no light poles. There's one really high wire, high electricity voltage setup, but it's really just a long distance setup. And it's about a 3/4 of a mile off to my left from where I flew. So I took off initially with the standard setup, and I flew straight towards the highway, which was just over 1.5 miles away. Straight down a fence line. And when you do these, guys, make sure you use something for orientation. There's no home point. I started going with the stock antennas. I got all the way to 5,950 feet before I got to a point where I wanted to stop, because I was coming up on the highway probably about another, I don't know, 1/4 mile or less, maybe 1/8 of a mile. And I stopped at around 6,000 feet. I had signal on my stock antennas. I was blown away. So I quickly was like, well, what am I going to do to test Tony's setup? I can't cross the highway. So I was really hoping that this thing was going to RTH at like 1,500, 2,000, 2,500. I came back. So I landed. I then decided to take off with the stock antennas and go the opposite 90-degree way. Now, 90 degrees from where I was flying previously was about a 1/2 mile before a decent, just a road, a crossroad. And then on the other side of that road was a neighborhood, a small neighborhood, but a neighborhood. All these flights were at 150 at this point. So I went up to 150 feet and I flew. Stock antennas. I got over the neighborhood and I started getting interference. And then I started getting to about 2,500, 2,700 in that range before it dropped signal and it RTH'd. So it RTH'd and it came home. And then I put on Tony FPVLR antenna. FPVLR.com, by the way. I put this on and I did the same thing. I flew the same way. Now, know that these actually do need to be pointed the correct direction, as in these spherical helix antennas are somewhat directional. You can't be flying behind you and you have to point at it, okay? Now, not only at it, but depending on the reflective surfaces of your tab, because when this sits in your, I don't have my tab on it, but whenever this sits in your radio, your device is actually very close to it, and it's usually an aluminum surface. It's helping reflect. It's causing all kinds of interference as far as the way that this antenna is designed to work on its own. It's making other stuff go on around it, so it's not great for it. It's something that Tony's looking at. It's another reason why he's doing the LHCP on it, is to lower the ground noise, or the floor. So this one, I only got 1,300 feet. 1,300 feet before it RTH'd. I was not impressed. I was very worried. I then did it again, and I got about 1,700. Remember, I got to 2,700 with the stock ones over the neighborhood. I'm not even making it to the road this time. So I chilled, and I was like, let me just do something. So I brought it back. I changed batteries, and this time I went the original way that I went the first time, and I got to 6,000, almost 6,100 feet, and the whole way it was much clearer and was less skippy and jittery on the on-screen display as far as the GoPro footage. So I was getting a cleaner resolution, or a cleaner picture, and it seemed a better signal. And then I got to the same point that I got to the stock ones, and a little further. And I couldn't go any further, man. I couldn't cross that highway. I'm sorry. It was it was actually a major interstate. It was out in the rural area, but it's still an interstate. I didn't want to cross it. So I came back. Again, coming back, picture was great the whole way. Better than it was on the stock one. So that I can say. I I'm sure this would have cleared much more than the other one as far as in a perfect vacuum. So what we were looking at was two different setups. Take off from the same point, but one flight was one way over a neighborhood, and the other flight was one way over nothing. It was literally just pasture and just nothing. Very little trees too, and I was 150 feet the whole time, 200 on the second flights both ways, in both antennas. I then came back real quick, and then with the FPVLR, flew to the neighborhood. This time I got to 23 to 2,500. It was somewhere in between because I was flying really fast when it dropped signal on the FPVLR before it lost signal in RTH. So, I mean, bottom line, what we're looking at is with disturbance, the stock ones seem to be slightly better because of the actual pattern that they utilize. But with Tony's FPVLR setup, and I'm going to do more testing this weekend, I guarantee you're going to get more range in a vacuum or in a better scenario. And basically what it's going to do is just, you should be flying in better scenarios, guys. Wi-Fi interference is affecting us. I don't care what 3DR says. It's definitely an issue. So take care. Fly safe, fly smart, fly. Guys, one thing I just forgot to say. Tony's a stand-up guy, man. From what I've dealt with him and everything, if there's any issues that's going to come that maybe this very rushed project, which, you know, he put out a picture and all of a sudden everybody wanted it, and, you know, he sold 50, 100 units very quickly, and it's possible that maybe a tweak or two is needed. I'm sure Tony will take care of everybody. Don't worry about it if there's anything else. However, let's not freak out. Let's not all just go and say, hey, this isn't working for me. Again, understand your surroundings and make sure that the test that you do is, you know, repeatable and accurate. Not only that, but let's get together and talk to Tony. Let's get him information. So I'm going to start a thread in Facebook on Tony's page, I think. And please just keep it to, this is what I flew, this is what I got this out of stock, I got this out of that. Same altitude, guys, and describe the area, and, you know, maybe Google map it, satellite view pics for us. Maybe you could draw on it with an app tool, something. I'm going to do all of this myself for my picks. So let's just keep it real, and let's just try to help Tony, help everybody. But the product's going to be right, and he's going to get good results out of it. And look out for the amps. The amps are that right there. That amp is going to immediately boost everything. So theoretically, these things are great. Let's just do some testing, and let's do it right. All right? ATXRC Productions out. Y'all fly safe, fly smart, fly 3DR. Just fly whatever you want.